or religion? Is the first question. Dharmo rakshati rakshita, that means those who protect dharma, dharma protects them. That is again extending to code and duty. It's not theological at all. So do you agree, disagree with Jagannathanji? Your thoughts?
I want to go back to what Jaggi said. The first thing is that there is a big, I would say, contradiction between the visuals and the text of the Constitution. Ram, Lakshman, Buddha, Dharma, none of these appear in the Constitution. In fact, India has such a rich tradition of Dharma Shastras, but the word Dharma or even Dhamma does not occur in the Constitution. Later on, after, the Constitution was already notified and approved, Dr. Ambedkar wrote his last book, which was actually published posthumously in 1956, or rather 57, the year after he died. It was called The Buddha and His Dhamma. And in part 4 of this book, book 4, part 1 of this book, and by the way, I must tell our viewers that this book of Dr. Ambedkar, his last book, is considered part of the sacred scripture of Navayan, the so-called religious tradition that he founded. And religion, again, is the wrong word. He starts by saying that contrary to religion, I'm quoting Dr. Ambedkar, contrary to religion, which is personal, Dhamma is social. Then he says, in point number 9, Dhamma is righteousness. And then point 11, he says, society cannot do without Dhamma. And then he says in paragraph 14, for Dhamma is nothing if it is not an instrument of government. And finally, in paragraph 17, he says, society may choose Dhamma plus the magistrate wherever people fail to observe Dhamma. So none of this is in the Constitution. And I think Jaggi was right. I would even say that the Constitution, with due respect, because we must respect this document which has saved and preserved and served our democracy for about 73 years, with due respect to the Constitution, we have to admit that it is a cut and paste job. Much of it is verbatim almost from the Government of India Act of 1935, and then it's got snippets from the American Constitution, from the UK Constitution, from the French Constitution, even little bits from the Australian, South African. So it is a kind of mishmash of various constitutions, but the bulk of it is the Government of India Act. Now, I wanted to say a couple of things. We are not a bibliolatrous society. In other words, we do not worship books. We are a society where both dharma as well as adhyatma is a living flow. It's a dynamic flow. And therefore, to worship the Constitution, which is a man-made document, is not the right way. It's not the Sanatani way. And don't forget, it has been amended 105 times.
Yes.
If it was so perfect. And by the way, it is the longest constitution in the world. So when most people were illiterate at 1950, and even today, we have a large number of people, even despite our progress in literacy, this humongously bulky constitution amended 105 times is, to me, not just an embodiment of dual consciousness, as was said in your last program, but I would risk saying that there is a schizophrenic element to it, you see, because it says one thing and then it undermines or takes it away. If you look at the preamble, it's got these famous 4 pillars of the Indian Constitution. Everybody knows them by heart: justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. And what it gives with one hand, it is taking away with the other. So justice, for one, is usually at the expense of someone else through all these amendments. Liberty, you give with one hand and then you say it's circumscribed in a number of ways. Equality, once again, not everybody is equal. Many are more equal, like minorities. The word minority is not a constitutional word, in fact. It's only in a footnote. But you mentioned in your last program, from the Sachar Commission, which is the latest, to Hajj subsidies which happened long ago, to funding for madrasas, etc., etc. It is not equality that you see. You see all these different rights for different people, and fraternity. Think about fraternity. We are unfortunately quite a divided society. I'm an educationist. I've been in education all my life. I can tell you, in our public universities, every seat has a quota attached to it. How can you have fraternity when you have demarcated every single seat and every single government job? So I would say that India at 75 requires a serious rethink, a serious debate and discussion on the Constitution. And the last thing I want to say to you, Anand, is that the Constitution embodies, the divided republic, India's culture wars, our conflict over who we are, our identity crisis as a republic. So if we get our Constitution right, it will really be an acknowledgement of who we really are.
Who we really are. Very well said there, Makranji. Largely it should be about equality, but have we made it about equity? That is another concern that has been raised. M.R. Venkatesh?
Anand, I think I'm not a superstitious guy, but I dread Friday the 13th. Why do I say that? Because Friday the 13th, 1946, Nehru moves the aims and the objectives of the Constitution. The Constitution in 1946 December is still in an embryonic stage. They are debating various things, whether this will be a democratic country, whether this will be a republic. And there are two exclusive and explicit promises made by Pandit Nehru. One, he says, we will safeguard the minorities. In other words, minorities and safeguarding minorities became more basic than anything else in the Constitution. The second thing, Nehru says that we will be a socialist economy and a socialist order. On these two things, on 1946 December, Nehru pulls it across, and people like M.R. Masani and others, are acting like cheerleaders to Nehru. And unfortunately, what happens is this becomes the driving point in our economics as well as politics. Secularism and socialism somehow have been smuggled into this country, and you have this Part 3 of the Constitution, which is basic rights. Now look at it, basic rights is something anathema to this civilization. We are a civilization wedded to karma, duties, responsibilities, individual performances. Thus, Anand, we suffer from what I call as a multiple personality disorder. When we are Bharatiyas, we talk about duties, we talk about responsibilities, we talk about so many things about our civilization. The moment we become Indians, we talk about fundamental rights, we talk about challenging the state, we talk about judiciary. The problem is that we have cut off ourselves as if we are a newly born nation on 15th August 1947, forgetting our past. And in this past is our Bharatiyata, our civilization. We were always a civilizational state. We were always a dharmic state. We were never a theological state, barring only one occasion in the history, recorded history, when Ashoka made Buddhism the state religion. Otherwise, we were always what is called as a completely dharma nirpeksha or a completely neutral, religious neutral state. But somewhere down the line, this got skewed so much in our public debate that secularism has become the state religion now. The perverted understanding of secularism, thanks to Pandit Nehru, that minorities must be given protection, and by which you said, implicitly what you said was, the Hindu majority is a tyrant and it will not allow the minorities to settle peacefully in this country. So they have to walk the extra mile through the state. So the state has been created primarily to protect the minorities. That is why you have these two articles, Article 29 and 30, which are at affront on the Hindu civilization. They challenges me and tells me that, look, you will not take care of your Muslim brothers, you will not take care of your Muslim sisters, and that is why this extra protection has been given in 29 and 30. And this, I think, is obnoxious. Now coming to socialism, let me read one paragraph on 15th November 1948, and this is by no less than Ambedkar. He says, what would be the policy of the state? How should the society be organized in its social and economic side are matters which must be decided by the people themselves according to time and circumstances. This is how the resolution on socialism was defeated on 15th November 1948. But what we have today is that we are a socialist country, we have it in the preamble cannot be touched. Courts have held the state to be a benevolent state, a welfare state. So many fundamental rights have been spawned. So many economic policies have been given. Unfortunately, because no courts want to enter this theater of economics, and we have held that socialism will be what it is. And today courts have said, believe me, on the last 30 seconds, the courts have said that if a man is completely supinely indifferent to his own self and stays awake and counts the stars, it will be the duty of the state to provide him 3 square meals a day. Now, this is what we are. We have come about as a republic, that we have become a completely irresponsible society at an individual level, and thanks to socialism, which is an anathema of karmanyavadhikarasya, which is the Moola mantra that drives this society. So there is a complete paradigm shift between the society and the state, which has been organized through the constitution.
Right.
I think for this reason alone, we need to revisit, and on the 100th year, we must get a better and a bigger constitution.
Right.
Having
The
said
state
this,
was...
no affront to the constitution, the framers...
Ji, please complete.
No, just a second. That the people who did the constitution, they had a challenge. We have to go back to the 1940s, and we have to see that they have to preserve an order against creating some more disorder on an already existing chaos. So they chose a very benign approach. Kudos to them, and full respect to people like Nehru, full respect to people like Ambedkar. But as Paranjbhai ji said, this is a rehash of the 1935 Act. We require something bigger, better and original.
Ji. In fact, there are many who believe that to be dharmic is entrenched in rule, because you have to follow a code and ethics. But to be panth nirpeksh is also important. That means you do not follow any religion. You don't lean on any religion. So you are panth nirpeksh, your personal law does not, personal beliefs don't come in. The state has to follow a code, and that's how you have to be dharmic. But the dharma was what? The principles of Ram Rajya, where they turned around and said governance for all, appeasement of none. And there will be minimum government and maximum governance. All these principles are there that were set, and society prospered over a period of time. We also even had our own dharma in terms of code of how to do economics, trade, what was the role of the king or role of the ruler, role of the governor, the person who is governing, on the governed. All of this is there. But let me just bring it into the studio, and then I'll go back to Jaggi sir, Paranjbhai ji and also M.R. Venkatesh. Nalin Mehta, agree, disagree with what's been shared so far?
So I think,
and your thoughts?
So I think, Anand, does India need a new conversation? Absolutely. But I think we should be careful with due respect. Is everything in this country, which is a political debate today, is it to be projected back to the constitution? I think we should be careful with that. The debate on secularism, for example. There are many versions of secularism globally. India has had and there are huge debates in India about secularism. Should be projected back. Secularism was not originally in the constitution. It comes in the 42nd Amendment in 76 along with socialism. Should be project that back. Now, see, the debate about the constitution is as old as the constitution itself. Even when the constitution was set up, there were members in the Constituent Assembly who said that this is a slavish imitation of Western constitutions. There were other members who said we expected the music of the veena and the sitar, what we got is the music of a Western band, right? At the same time, there were others in the Constituent Assembly who said, no, this is not necessarily true. But at the end of the day, there were about 300 plus members before partition, eventually there were 280 plus, all of them signed on the dotted line. It wasn't the perfect document. No document is perfect. It is still not perfect. I think it was mentioned earlier by Jaggi or I think by Makarand that the Constitution has been amended over 100 times. The American Constitution is 250 years old. They've been amended about 27, 28 times. We've been amended already 4x times more in the last 70 plus years. It is an evolving, living document. I think we should see it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. Let me speak a little bit in defense of the Constitution, on the glass half full side. Look, the debate on the Constitution, fundamentally, see, we are a country with multiple divides and multiple cultural challenges. Also, we are having a great political conversation on secularism and many other things right now. I think if you open everything up without having a core document, it can create, it's a very difficult conversation to manage. So I think the fact that the constitution is a living document, the fact that you can go back and criticize it and you can amend it and you can do various things, I think the constitution is one of the major reasons why India has continued in the way it is. Now, should you have a debate on secularism? Absolutely. For example, on the 125th anniversary, recently in 2015, there was a very strong debate in Parliament about the notion of secularism itself, where Rajnath Singh made this point about the meaning of secularism in the official translation. Is it Panth Nirpeksh or Dharm Nirpeksh? So Yogi Adityanath has made this argument as well, that there is a difference between being community neutral and religious neutral. For example, Yogi made this argument that he stopped going to iftar parties. And he said, look, as the sitting chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, I do not want to go to an iftar party because it is against my religious belief to do so. I have my right as an individual. However, it is my constitutional duty as the chief minister to ensure that that party happens, and it happens with due security, so that everybody has an equal right to profess. And that is the difference between being Dharm Nirpeksh and Panth Nirpeksh. I think in India, we've always had a notion of secularism in its truest form, originally, before it became spoiled and besmirched in multiple ways and misused. It was about, religion was always central to this. It wasn't the French notion in that sense, where religion is totally outside of public life. Now, I think, should we go towards the best version of that, or should we remove that altogether? Those are debates.
See, but the point is, like you said, a living document. Now, if a living document, the preamble of that living document is supposed to be untouched. You should not touch it. It is supposed to be true. But if I go ahead and chisel it away, and if I try and push a tattoo on it, then that tattoo is that not a blemish? Because that tattoo happened when democracy was in jail, when the nation was in a state of emergency. And these were two words which were rejected in the founding debates and our Constituent Assembly debates, and even in 1946. They said, no, you should not put it. So is that not a fraud on our Constitution? Because those two words are the bane of all political narratives and discourse. Those two words have been the most debased, including secular, because what secular stands for and what it is used for in India is a totally different logic altogether. So, shouldn't it be reviewed? Why should we say, oh, don't touch it? Why? It didn't go with everybody's, the Constitution, the Supreme Court should not, were not agreeing to it. Why aren't the courts turning around and saying, no, this is wrong, this is a fraud on the Constitution?
See,
they have an opinion on everything, they don't have an opinion on this.
See, the essence of Constitution, when we read even the Article 1, the starting point, it says that India, that is Bharat. And one very important term, I would say, of Indian Constitution is secular, on which we all are discussing. Now, the charge of Indian Constitution reflected on the first time when the Constituent Assembly debates was happening, and this word was taken out 3 times, taken down 3 times. And later in 1976, it was added through an amendment. See, we have to understand that what was the essence of the Constituent Assembly at that point of time. And Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel at that time submitted in his, during the Constituent Assembly debates, that a minority and secular, these two words cannot coexist. Now, what is to be understand that how the minority laws gave rise to different personal laws in India and how these differences cropped up, right? And the other point is that when this minority word came up, even in the footnotes of Constitution, minority was classified on 2 bases. One is the religion basis and another is the linguistic base. When we talk about the linguistic base, we also have Sanskrit as a minority, but do we have any kind of budget, any kind of scheme, any kind of commission promoting these kind of linguistic minorities?
I'll
no.
show you 8th schedule. I'm just saying, sorry Pratik, since you mentioned it and I had mentioned it earlier in the day, the final page, when we come to page number 220 in the 8th schedule, the 14 languages that are listed, Sanskrit is number 11 and Kashmiri is number 6.
Yes.
Now, what provision has been made for it? Yeah,
yes, there is no linguistic provision to these minority languages or minority, which has been enshrined in our Constitution. Right. Now, coming to the point that there is a difference that being a government can be secular, a person cannot be secular. And this has to be made clear, and I add to the point of Mr. Nalin Mehta that when a chief minister states that I will not go in the iftar party, that is his personal choice, and that is correct as far as constitutional provisions are concerned, because secular word only talks about the state, and when you are on the position of chief minister, you have to arrange the things wherein the state is only involved, that other rights of minorities are not hampered with. So we have to understand that what was the essence of the Constituent Assembly, why secular word was taken down 3 times, why later in 1976 through one amendment out of 105 amendments which we have hammered in our constitution, why this word has come up, and what Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel meant that minority and secular cannot coexist.
Right. But in my case, I am asking you, we were never secular, sir, because we should have never had this word, because our first Prime Minister, Jaggi sir, before I bring in Makranji, I am just going back in the same order, our first Prime Minister was a Pandit, our first Education Minister was a Maulana. So what this whole thing about India is pluralistic. Our Hindu philosophy, our old cultural ethos is we are pluralistic. So we are pluralistic in our approach. That's got to be the ethos. The governance, yes, it will be for all. Equanimous. Jagannathan ji.
Yeah, absolutely. The word secular is completely irrelevant in the Indian context from the points of view of everybody. For example, the word secular was separation of church from state, and it has a European context. Then, if you look at Islam, the mosque, state, and the political leadership is merged into one in the form of the Prophet. So there is no concept of separating one from the other. And if you take the Hindu concept, we are completely comfortable with the idea of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha.
Yeah.
That means we think all these can be integrated into one without having to physically separate one from the other, because we think all 4 objectives are important and relevant for a human being in its future. So in this context, the only relevant word is plural, not secular, because it does not have any meaning in the Indian context. So we have, and as far as social is concerned, it is irrelevant, because after 1991, the government that inserted the word socialist itself junked the idea. So let's not even talk about it, but the word secular is totally irrelevant, and a lot of things which are meant for minority protection have been interpreted and used to deny the same rights to so-called majority. So like if you have 25(2)(b), there is a direct call for the courts to intervene in order to make Hindu religious places inclusive, right? So it gives them an excuse to get into every Hindu religious issue, whereas the same thing does not happen. Even though the word Hindu says, okay, Hindu, Sikh, Jain, and Buddhist, but the fact is, why is it that only Hindu interventions are there? You have separate laws only for taking over Hindu temples. Even Jain, Buddhist, and Sikh temples are run separately. They don't come under the state.
Yeah.
But this is what you have done. So you basically, you inserted a wrong word and you have interpreted it even worse to make it anti-majority. That is your problem in the constitution. It needs to be rethought completely.
Makranji?
Correct. That is the point.
Yes, I want to second that, in the sense that, though I want to also go back to what Nalin said, we don't have to junk the constitution. That will really result in chaos, because this has served us well up to a point, but we have to amend it. And the first important and challenging amendment is to remove those 2 tainted words, as you yourself suggested, socialist and secular. They were brought in through the 42nd Amendment. If the preamble is sacred or sacrosanct, then Parliament has no business to amend it. Similarly, the judiciary has constantly been interpreting the Constitution in an anti-majoritarian, I dare say even anti-Hindu way, as we've just heard. So we need to insert certain things into the Constitution through amendments. For example, we should, say that we are probably a dharmic society, nothing wrong in saying that, and have at the same time a uniform civil law so that all religions are treated equally, not this minority-majority business. And let's not forget that at one level, the Constitution smacks of paternalism, which goes completely contrary to the spirit of Hind Swaraj of Gandhiji, where he said our ancient civilization was the best thing we had, because it was dharmic and it was as good as mother's milk. But our paternalistic constitution seems to imply that the state with its coercive power will correct society at every step. which is not required. I think human beings, are able to take care of themselves, provided they do not violate other people's rights. So we need greater liberty, not less. We need less state interference. Praja, not Raja, should be supreme, And therefore, with certain kinds of amendments, we can right this balance which has swung, to the other side and treat citizens equally, not interfere. And even this whole minority mongering, whether it's religious or linguistic, should end, because you've come from Mumbai. The best colleges are hiding behind a minority status, saying, we are Sindhis, we are Gujaratis, this is a Marathi state, because it's a madhouse we've created. If we lift all these restrictions and free our people and their creative energies, we are going to have an explosion of progress, which is what I think the Amrit Kal, the idea that the next 25 years are going to be really defining for this so-called Indian century. Then we have to remove these restrictions so that the energy, the creativity, and the ability of the people are removed, and the government and the judiciary and everybody else stop sitting on the backs of our people, see, who are flourishing, not because, but in spite of all these restrictions. And the Constitution, therefore, can be strategically and beneficially amended without being scrapped. By introducing Dhamma, uniform civil code, equality for all, the removal of these special privileges over and over again. 75 years we've done it. So we are not going to have, I hope, for another 75 years, this distortion of the caste system whereby by birth you can enjoy eternal benefits which are state sanctioned, because we don't know who we are till somebody stamps us and say, you're in the schedule, you're in this, you're in that. And it's also an incentive for conversion. Please don't forget. So let's address some of these issues in these next 25 years so that I think we can go back. And I also agree that the Constituent Assembly debates are possibly more interesting, than the Constitution, because all these matters that we are talking about today are already present in those debates. So we have to go back and really try to get back the spirit, of what our nation was supposed to be, which is really a dharmic, civilizational republic which treats all citizens equally, regardless of religion, language, ethnicity, region, caste, creed. Whereas today we have become a madhouse of identity politics, with each one asking for special rights and privileges, which I think goes against the spirit of the Constitution.
Yatho dharma tatho jaya. The Mahabharata itself is called Jaya. That's the story. And from the Gita, if that is there on our Supreme Court, why is it that this concept that Chaturvarnam Maya Shristha Guna Karma Vibhagasaha is lost in the Constitution, that it is Guna and Karma that decides your Varna? So, and that should have been the focus. So somewhere had this Constitution been drafted in Hindi or in Sanskrit and then perhaps translated in other languages, we may just have had this debate 75 years down the line in Sanskritam or another Bharatiya Bhasha. So that's also another aspect which we need to think about. M.R. Venkatesh, and then coming to Nalin and Pratik. M.R.G.
Mr. Narasimhan, I would just suggest that let us not take a benign approach. I think a time has come. Everything comes with a shelf life, and the Constitution has served us well, but doesn't mean that we have to look beyond it. And I think the new generation, the next generation, deserves something much bigger and better. For starters, I think we have to make fundamental duties justiciable. What we have in Article 51 capital A is an ornamental piece. It is not a functional piece. We have to make duties, individual duties, functional. That is point one. Point two, Article 12, which defines the state but doesn't define its role, responsibilities or its scope, must be clearly defined. You have, for instance, you take the Companies Act, you have the roles of the directors defined. You take the auditor's role defined. But when it comes to the constitution, we have just defined the state and left it open to for any type of interpretation. That is a bottomless pit. We need to tell the state will be a minimalistic state if it is a civilizational one. Understand, Ram Rajya is Rajya where without Ram is functional. The Rajya without Ram is called Ram Rajya. It is not an interventionist state, it is a minimalistic state. So you will have to say the state will do these things positively, state will not do these things positively. So we have to be very clear about a negative list and a positive list. Unless we do these type of radical changes, we will be in this continuous state of drift. We will be fighting for the next 500 years about whom should be given reservation, whether the Jat is above a Brahmin or a Brahmin is above a Kshatriya or a Kshatriya is below a scheduled caste. This will be the type of debate we will be entering into. We should also be very clear that we need to have a very, very clear economic policy wherein the state will have certain role but will not enter certain business ticket or the commercial ticket. And this is what I would say, that the entire constitution has to be started to think about it de novo. As you said, we have to start writing the constitution in probably a vernacular language, a Hindi or Bengali or Tamil or whatever. But the way we have transacted business till date and made English the language of the courts, can you believe that you can't talk in any Indian language in any high court? It is such a shameful thing. And you know, we have to revisit the constitution de novo and then start looking at it. And this is no affront to the constitution. The present one has served us well. Again, I repeat it, but doesn't mean that we should go forward and take a complete break from the past.
So you're saying that we need to revisit entirely. There are others who say no, there is a solid core to it and that has served us well and that is still sustaining Bharat and its people. There are others who believe it is in spite of what this constitution has done, we have still survived. So we are still managed. So there are opinions, but everybody believes that there is a review that is required. Yes, 10 seconds, MR, because you put your hand up, and then I'll come to Nalit. Yeah.
Anand, it makes India survive, not Bharat. So we have to go de novo to reconnect with the civilizational Bharat.
Got it.
Anand, for very long, the debate on reviewing the constitution and the terms that we're talking about has often been hostage too much to the dogmas of the left and the right both, of the echo chambers on both sides. There's great mistrust, right? Now, look at the people who formed our constitution. There were people from different stratas across the princely states as well as the provinces, both from left and right. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was on the Constituent Assembly, so was K.M. Munshi. The president was Rajendra Prasad. You also had H.C. Mukherjee from the Hindu Mahasabha. They all signed off on it. Does that mean that we should not review it? Absolutely, we should. We are a living constitution. We are a living nation. We must have that debate. Also, I think we should not shy away from the deep cultural heritage of this country. Even the Mauryan seal, which is the symbol of the Republic of India, has Dharma Chakra Parivartane.
Correct.
Right? So should we not have that simply because there is a leftist dogma about not accepting religion or religious symbols, whether from Hinduism or Buddhism or from others and so on? No. But I think at this also the constitution you pointed out, the manuscript lying on your table, it shows that the page on the fundamental rights, for example, was illustrated with the images of Ram and Sita coming back from Ayodhya. The page on the directive principles, I think, has got
Arjuna and Krishna
reciting, delivering the Gita, the Upadesh on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Everyone from Akbar to Ashoka,
they're all there. They all find reference. This is the Ram Lakshman Sita.
See, of course, the point is we should have a debate on this, and I think we should not shy away as a nation, as a confident republic going forward to look at our cultural markers of identity and so on. Is the constitution a perfect document? Absolutely not. The only point I'm trying to make is that we need to do this very carefully to assuage the concerns of those who think that this will then tilt one way or the other. So it has to be done very carefully. It has to be done with intellectual debate, and it should be kept away from the extremists. I mean, I think this is a very careful debate to be
But the
had.
fact is that there are deliberate attempts to crowd the narrative. Deliberate attempts to crowd the narrative in favor of those who actually engineered the partition of this country and the split of this country, saying that we cannot live with one set of people.
May I say one more thing?
So that is also there. And Now, as Makaranji, and I'm going to quote him from another earlier show where he said that the red, woke and the green have now combined together. They've combined ranks. So then they form a collective narrative, each trying to feed into the other. That's what's happened. Correct me or not, Makaranji, if I remember your quote. So Pratik, yeah.
See,
yeah, you wanted to say
I
something
may
quick?
say one more thing, and this includes debating things like, is it India that is Bharat or Bharat that is India? So for example, even at the time of the Constituent Assembly, it was debated, should we use Hind or Hindustan or Bharat or Bharatvarsh, right? Or even Jambu Dweep for that matter. You know, there is a Sanskrit hymn which says Jambu Dweepe, Bharatvarshe, Bharat Khande, Aryavarte. Now all of those things were debated in the Constituent Assembly. Should we shy away from that?
No, but the lobby that wanted to become more West then go back to our roots actually
So
prevailed.
eventually
Because
India that is Bharat prevailed.
it prevailed, but should that be the case? Because our country was partitioned as Hindustan and Pakistan. So should it be Bharat that is Hindustan or Hindustan that is Bharat and not India? Because this whole word India is a Western creation. Because they couldn't pronounce Sindhu, they became Hindu and Indic. So that's how the whole concept of Indic came. So should we go further away from Hindustan and Bharat, or should we go back to Bharat and then go back to Hindustan, what we are? Pratik, some final
See,
word.
the present narrative is less important than what Constituent Assembly discussed, and Anand, they discussed to an extent that if a minority is strong enough to carve out a nation, then it is to be decided that whether minority status or minority term should come there or not. And thereafter, when Constituent Assembly discussed this, we have Ministry of Minority, we have national commissions, we have thousands of crores of budget of which is contrary to what Constituent Assembly discussed, because they think that if minority is strong enough to carve out a nation, a separate state, then that status may not be required. See, we cannot become slave of a narrative, and that is what the present political regime, the present apex, the judicial intervention is required, that now when the final amendment is required, is to happen, that should happen as per the essence of the Constitution.
Less than 1% of the population can be minority. 14% of this population, 16% of the population will be the second largest majority. So the lexicon also, terms of reference have to change. And those who are 1%, 2%, 3% of the population are not the ones who are raising who are not rabble-rousing, and they are not asking for separate rights. They are happy because they have been allowed to coexist. They have been allowed to, without any quota or anything, go ahead and flourish. It's the second largest majority, which, like you said in the Constituent Assembly, said very clearly that they were able to engineer a split of this country.
Yes.
And if they continue to portray themselves as minority and we continue to allow that to happen, then it is a fraud on this constitution, because that aspect was considered. In our country, this constitution has to see everyone equally. It's got to be equality, not equity. Somewhere we seem to be floundering on that narrative. I'm way over time, but Makaranji, since you put your hand up, yes please. Sir, but 1 minute, and you have to wind up in 1 minute.
Absolutely. By the way, equity, which means justice, is also important. Justice for all and equality for all are not contrary. But I just wanted to say one thing. It seems very tempting to say, oh, scrap it and do it all over again. But I don't think as a society or as a polity, we are in a position to do so. So I'm for incremental changes, amendments with consensus and debate. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we can unleash chaos. I think in your programs, certain very important points have come up, such as the position of dharma, the status of minorities, uniform civil code, the removal of socialism, the removal of secularism from the preamble. I think these are doable and achievable goals, and we should build on these rather than thinking that we can tomorrow write something in Sanskrit or in Hindi or in Tamil or in Marathi, and suddenly it will resonate with the soul of the people. Because I want to repeat, let's not forget that English is also an Indian language.
We've Indianized English.
Let's not
So
throw
much
the
so we
baby
are
with the
writing
bathwater.
Hindi in Roman. We are communicating a lot of other languages in Roman. So we've Indianized the script. We have also incorporated a lot of Bharatiya language words into the English, like so much so that they are adding it in the Merriam-Webster and also the Oxford every year. So thank you very much. Thank you. It's been phenomenal. I would like for this discussion to continue, but I am way over time. So gentlemen, namaste, Jai Hind. Thank you very, very much for joining us on this Constitution Day series.
developments where now political leaders, in fact several users on social media, are asking for an action against this actress and are asking for a case against her.
Absolutely. Akash, also important to talk about how motor mouth leaders like Udit Raj are also jumping to her defense.
Yes, and you know, as I mentioned earlier, when you don't know about the factual condition, because you know, man in uniform will never come to you and will say, no, this is not the condition, this is the actual condition, and you know, they are not answerable to you, because there are certain things where, you know, these things cannot be discussed openly, or cannot be, you know, said in public. Again, when you are talking about government, you can say a number of things, you can ask number of questions, but when it is about men in uniform, the army jawan, you know, that is facing the harsh conditions at the Galwan Valley and or, you know, for that matter any border part. So they are in a situation where they need to protect us, they need to protect our territory, and that's the reason why they are facing these harsh conditions. And even after these harsh conditions, they have to, you know, hear such comments, then this is something we should refrain.
There's been a massive controversy. This time it is a Bollywood actor who has stirred the hornet's nest. Actor Richa Chadha has sparked a massive row by mocking the Galwan martyrs after army is taking back POK there. The actress responded in a tweet earlier saying, "Galwan says hi." Richa Chadha has been accused of insulting the armed forces in her latest tweet. Now, the Northern Army Commander Lieutenant General Upendra Dwivedi had said that the Indian Army is ready to execute orders like taking back the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, to which the actor had responded sarcastically on Twitter. Now, the Galwan Valley clash was the deadliest confrontation between India and China in over 4 decades. It led to the death of 20 Indian soldiers. Let's also listen in to the kind of political reactions that have poured in soon after Richa Chadha sent out her first tweet.
India and Indians respect the army and the armed forces. And when our chief of the army says something, we respect that. It's unfortunate that someone, for posting something on the social media, decides to mock the army. Is it correct? Do they even understand the valor that was displayed at Galwan by the soldiers who gave up their life fighting for the motherland? It's unfortunate and condemnable to come out with this kind of a post.
फिल्म जगत की अभिनेत्री सुर्खियों में आने के लिए, ओछी पब्लिसिटी पाने के लिए क्या वो हमारे फौजी भाइयों का अपमान करेगी? जो हमारे जवान अपने परिवार को, बच्चों को, माता पिता को छोड़कर दिन रात देश की सीमा पर खड़े हैं, उनका तो मस्तक झुका करके उनका सम्मान होना चाहिए। इस प्रकार की घिनौनी मानसिकता रखने वाली यह अभिनेत्री क्या समझेगी उनका समर्पण? सारा देश चाहता है कि वे हाथ जोड़कर हमारे देश के जवानों की माफी मांगे।
An actress of the Bollywood has in fact mocked the statement, and she has written Galwan says hi. How do you see this statement?
I think very apt comments she has put up, that still a part of large part of our land of Galwan is under possession of China, and Mr. Modi lied at that time in July 2020 that nobody had entered. At many places they have encroached our land, and it's so visible from even satellite images. And apart from it, of course, in Arunachal Pradesh also China has built the villages. So she is very appropriate, a kind of satire she made, that they are claiming to get back POK. Then of course, what about the China encroachment or China incursion in our land? So it's very appropriate, I feel, if it is made in that context.
All right. Try and get in the latest details on this news story, and for that I'm joined in by my correspondent Akash. Akash, important to talk about how there's been a lot of back and forth when we look at the kind of tweets that were being sent out by Richa Chadha, eventually leading to an apology that only goes on to say the frivolity with which she has treated the entire matter.
Right, and you see, Akanksha, yes, the actress has apologized, but talking about the developments, since the time she mentioned these three words, and the backlash that she faced. So, two aspects that I was mentioning just a few minutes back as well. One was that some were saying that she has freedom of expression and she can tweet whatever she wants to. But even those people were asking for an explanation as to what were her intentions. On the other hand, we have these people who were against of the particular tweet, because they say that this is a sensitive topic, and at a time when you don't know the factual condition, at a time when you don't know the actual condition, you should refrain commenting or talking about the particular topic. Also, things are different after 2020, we all know that. And while it is about the 2020, so we lost several lives, and it was the ultimate sacrifice of
Back on with an update coming through that there has been a security breach with the Prime Minister in Gujarat. That's the breaking news that's coming in here. And it's a Right Stand exclusive and a CNN News 18 exclusive. Our investigations editor Manoj Gupta getting us these details that sources in the Gujarat police are saying that there was a drone that's been shot down by the NSG security team in Gujarat. A multi-agency probe has been launched. The drone was largely harmless. There was nothing in the drone, but the cops are now going to find out why it was flown. This happened around 4:30 p.m. this evening around the Prime Minister's rally and cavalcade, and we're given to understand one person is currently in custody. Siddhant now joins us with more details. Yes, Siddhant.
Well, yes, that's right, Anand, and it's a major security breach, keeping in mind that election season is going on in the state of Gujarat, and mostly, before the election, even Election Commission takes meeting with the DGP and the heads of the other security forces and the neighboring states. And this is perhaps the reason that NSG security forces could successfully spot this drone, and this drone was shot down. Now, post this, keeping in mind the seriousness of this entire matter, multi-agency probe has been launched, and this is what Manoj Gupta is reporting for us. And one person has been taken into custody. He is also being questioned by security agencies. Police have to find out that why this drone was flown, and this has happened today, Anand. And not just Prime Minister, but other senior leaders, VIP, VVIPs, all are camping in the state of Gujarat. There are more than 10 senior politicians, those who are Z plus security protectees. All are camping in Gujarat. So, keeping these scenarios in mind, the security agencies are on high alert. And especially after this incident, more precaution is going to be taken ahead. Back to you.
Do we know where in Gujarat this happened? This happened around 4:30 p.m. this evening, Siddhant, and was the PM addressing a rally? The NSG cops, did they actually spot this and then shoot it down? It looks harmless. That's what we're given to understand, that there was nothing on the drone. But the question is, how did it get into the vicinity of the PM?
Well, yes, Anand, this is actually a question, because whenever PM is present at a particular location, then that location is it becomes a no-flying zone. And in fact, the drones also, which are usually used in Prime Minister's rally, are used with a prior permission of agencies. And agencies monitor the movement of those drones. So if this unknown drone was flying, then it is a serious breach in PM security. And this is perhaps the reason that this one matter is being taken up at the highest level, both at the government level and at the level of the security agencies. And the best people have been asked to look into the matter, even if there is nothing serious behind this, but the reason should be known, that why this drone was flying near to the Prime Minister's venue. So this is a very serious matter, Anand, and especially when Prime Minister is someone who is on a radar of many extremist groups,
right,
not just in India but across the world. And in fact, you remember, Anand, the security breach in Prime Minister's security during Punjab election, and then several Several such incidences have taken place where calls were made to the control room of police forces, and so those things are happening, and this is the reason that this is being taken very seriously at the highest level.
Now we're given to understand one person has been arrested. The drone was harmless, but it is a security breach, and it happened about 4:30 p.m. this evening while the Prime Minister was there leading the BJP's campaign push in Gujarat. Siddhant, stay on with us. We've got more news coming through, ladies and gentlemen, and this is from the national capital. Big exclusive here and breaking news coming through here on the Right Stand and CNN News 18. Top intelligence sources are telling your channel that there are hacking of systems at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi. So there is a cyber attack that's happened. A multi-agency probe has been launched and the Delhi police has registered a case. Sources telling your channel that the hacking happened because of weak firewalls on the software. AIIMS authorities are saying they couldn't procure new systems because of bureaucratic delay at the government level, and the only government agency that procures software for this purpose, that is GEMS or GEMS. Now, sources say that the recovery is on and agencies are hopeful of finding a solution soon. Siddhant stays on with us. Siddhant, so a mega security breach that happened earlier today at AIIMS.
Absolutely, Anand. Very serious because Anand, all senior cabinet ministers, all VIPs go to AIIMS for their medical treatment, for consultation, and their data is in the computer of the hospital. And this is perhaps the reason that multi-agency probe has been launched in this matter also. And in fact, Manoj Gupta is reporting that Delhi police has also registered FIR in this case. Now, these systems not just have the medical profile of VVIPs, but millions of other people, those who visit AIIMS for consultation, for medical treatment, and in fact, this is a hacking which has been done. And Manoj Gupta also has to say that AIIMS authority couldn't procure new systems because of the bureaucratic delay of GEMS. So GEMS is the only government agency through which the better software can be procured. So because of which only there was a delay, and now this is being reported that hacking has been done and the entire server has been hacked. So in fact, the agencies are also suspecting that the data of patients, the data of the secret data of many prominent people are compromised. And this is what we can confirm for our viewers at this given point in time. But let's wait for more details and official confirmation from security agencies.
Do we know, because throughout the COVID period also there were threats, there were chances that an AIIMS is a critical installation which has been in the radar of cyber hackers or cyber terrorists or cyber crime. But in this case, do we know the antecedents of who tried to or who attempted the hacking? And do we also know how much data has been taken away?
Well, yes, Anand. That's a very important question, and security agencies are also focusing on the same. Reason being, Anand, because there have been multiple hacking attempts that have been orchestrated from Pakistan and China. So these two countries have been launching hacking attacks and hacking the servers of key installations in India, especially the aviation sector, the banking sectors and universities. But this is a new. It appears, Anand, that this is a new modus operandi where AIIMS, one of the prominent medical institute, has been targeted by hackers. Now, what is an intention? We really don't know. That is what security agencies are trying to find out. That even if China or Pakistan has done this, then what is an intention?
Well, we have to see who the people are, because they're saying that the firewalls were weak. The information that we have is that there is a multi-agency probe that's been launched and the Delhi police has registered a case. The building where the systems were hacked was also catering to VVIPs and VIPs, and there could be a data leak, confidential data, not just of VIPs, but also a lot of people whose medical history or medical data should be kept confidential. So a lot of people's data could have been compromised, and that there is a recovery is on, and the agencies are hopeful of a solution very, very soon. Thank you for your input, Siddhant. With that, we call it a wrap on this edition of The Right Stand. Stay with us. Zaka, ready with brass tacks. Good evening, this is Brass Tax. I'm Zaka Jacob. Bollywood actor Richard Chadda today made a derogatory tweet against the Galwan martyrs who died in June 2020. Now, these brave men died fighting against blatant Chinese transgression. They fought and died for the security and for the honor of our nation. Her tweet mocked their supreme sacrifice. This was in response to the Northern Army commander saying that they are ready to take back Pakistan-occupied Kashmir if orders come to that effect. Whatever problems, whatever differences, whatever criticisms you may have against a government, a political party, a prime minister, or even the army for that matter, should you not have the basic courtesy and the basic decency to keep martyred soldiers out of that? Even if Richa Chadda has now deleted her tweet and she has apologized and said how there were members in her family who were also part of the armed forces, does it cut it? Because she did cross a red line in our civil discourse, and that is, we do not insult people who have died for this great nation.
Galwan says hi. These three words, enough to spark a massive controversy. Actor Richa Chadda faced severe backlash after she tweeted these three words. Richa Chadda had quote-tweeted on a statement made by Northern Army Commander-in-Chief Upendra Dwivedi on how confident they were to take the POK back from Pakistan. Actor Akshay Kumar has also now jumped into the controversy and condemned the tweet by Chadda. He tweeted that he was hurt by the tweet and nothing should make us ungrateful towards our armed forces. The BJP were quick to react on the issue as well. The Saffron Party attacked Richa Chadda and made a call to boycott her movies at the box office.
फिल्म जगत की अभिनेत्री सुर्खियों में आने के लिए, ओछी पब्लिसिटी पाने के लिए क्या वो हमारे फौजी भाइयों का अपमान करेगी?
Filmmaker Ashok Pandit filed a complaint against Richa at the Juhu police station in Mumbai and demanded stern action against her.
I, as a citizen of this country, felt very hurt with this obnoxious anti-national statement of actress Richa Chadda. I strongly condemn it, and that's why I thought as a citizen I should make a police complaint against her. I have appealed to the police that an FIR should be filed against her and lawfully action should be taken against her.
Very appropriate, I feel.
But the Congress party defended Richa. The Grand Old Party believes that Richa actually reminded the government about what the real situation is.
A very apt comments he had put up, that still a part of large part of our land of Galwan is under possession of China.
Richa Chadda later apologized and deleted the tweet. But this wasn't enough to douse the fire that had already lit up. The question which arises now is, did Richa Chadda tweet just for the sake of provocation?
All right, let me bring in our guest, Colonel Dr. DPK Pillai is former Army Research Fellow at the IDSA, Ratan Sharda, RSS researcher and author, Nasir Abdullah, actor, and Ravi Rai, film director, joining us. Colonel Pillai, I said this at the top of the show, you can criticize a government, you can criticize the Prime Minister, policies, you can even criticize the army, there's nothing wrong with it. But to say Galwan says hi in a derogatory way, insulting the supreme sacrifice of those who died in Galwan, fighting against the blatant transgression attempts of the Chinese, that is a red line that no one should cross in this country. Has Richa Chadda crossed that red line?
No, definitely there is a kind of a mock that the tweet wasn't definitely a moral reminder or wasn't intended to kind of raise a consciousness. It was something on what the army commander had said about that we are ready, and that's what the armed forces of the Union of India are. They've always snatched victory from the jaws of certain defeat, whether it is in 1947, 48, or even in 62. And in fact, we've ceded away large parts of our territory to China silently in the early days, you know, to where the G219 comes. And we must be reminded constantly that these are territories that are legally ceded to India in 1947 on 27th of October. So the fact is that this tweet was definitely not a reminder, like Mr. Udit Raj had just now said, that it is, I think it is in bad taste.
Yeah.
And it is also mocking our capacities and capabilities of the armed forces to do. And something that the armed forces has never let down is this country is that it has never lost a war for this country. It has upheld the finest traditions. We are celebrating the 50th anniversary. In fact, I just returned from a battalion where, against all odds, we've created a new country in Bangladesh, a free country.
Yep.
We've been an example to the rest of the world in the manner in which we've actually responded to humanitarian crisis in Bangladesh, or whether it's the way we've responded. So to say Galwan says hi was an extremely bad taste, and it is something that I think her PR managers told her, because I frankly don't even know who Richa Chadha is. But now definitely, since it's going around, I try to find out who she is. And there is negative publicity is also good publicity for her. Immediately you get divided into two camps, and then you are there, you are now in the forefront. And you see that in ad campaigns also, where people kind of provocate the silent people to react by taking something which are definitely sensitive.
No,
and
while
issues that are
I
going to
buy
create.
to some extent the argument of negative publicity is also good publicity in that sense, especially if you're in Bollywood, in entertainment, and if you're not an A-lister, you need to do these gimmicky things to stay relevant. But there's a line, Nasir Abdullah, between being gimmicky and being downright abusive or insulting. And I think her tweet, when she says, tongue firmly in cheek, Galwan says hi, that was insulting. That was repulsive. And just an apology saying, oh, by the way, I'm sorry for what I said, just doesn't cut it, because like I said, there is a red line that she has crossed, and that red line is you do not insult people who have died for this country.
Okay. So here's the deal. It was an unnecessary, irresponsible statement made in a light moment at best, but it was absolutely unnecessary. And she obviously thought in her head something about this, the possible attack, that we can take back the POK, which is true. Within a week, he was right to say that, the army head. But somewhere, I think in a light moment, she thought, oh, it'll lead to that. So she saw somewhere the consequences of a possible attack to take back the POK, and she, that's my opinion, in a light-hearted moment, she almost joked about it, which was again irresponsible, in my opinion.
What's light-hearted about?
I don't think she
what's
has
light-hearted
any
about
intention. I don't think. No, I know.
Mocking soldiers who've died for this country?
She was not mocking. No.
You don't think that tweet was mocking?
Did she say that? No. Hang on. You are going on giving me a lecture. You don't allow me to speak, you guys.
I'm asking you a question, Nasir. Cool down. Why are you getting all...
Yes, I am answering. Don't analyze what is happening to me. So here's the deal. Are you sure that she's actually mocking? She said it in a light moment.
You tell me. I mean, this tweet is there in front of you. Galwan says hi.
I'll tell you.
She's quote-tweeting what the army commander of the Northern Command said, that we are ready if orders come, so we are ready to attack POK.
Absolutely.
And she says, Galwan says hi.
Absolutely.
And you don't think that's mocking? You don't think that's mocking, Nasir?
I know, yeah. But it is being interpreted as a mocking, but she made light of it, that this might lead to that. She was looking at the consequences. Maybe what we need to do is to ask her, maybe. Also, Kangana Ranaut many years ago said that Bombay is POK. Now, that was a highly irresponsible statement. Okay. She also said once upon a time we didn't get independence in 1947. That was a charity. We got independence in 2014. Irresponsible statement, said in a light moment maybe. It was not taken very seriously, but this is being also taken very... I agree.
No, I
think,
look. Once
again,
hang on.
But people are getting very offended about it.
The issue is, like I said, you can crack a joke, you can criticize a government or a politician or even a prime minister.
Yeah.
Even the army. I don't think any institution in this country, the Supreme Court included, you are free to criticize. That's why we are a democracy.
Yeah.
But. My problem is, Ratan Sharda, when you drag in people who have given their lives for this country, protecting the sovereignty of this country, and say it in a mocking way. I'm absolutely clear in my mind. She said it tongue firmly in cheek. She was trying to make fun of what the Northern Army commander was saying, right? You cannot do that. You cannot do that. Sorry, Nasir. You cannot do that with people who have died for this country. It's as simple as that. It's a red line. You don't cross that red line. Ratan Sharda.
Well, Galvan, Zakka, we are safe because our people die for us. We remember that. When you talk of Galwan, you remind of a very painful episode when our Jawans were hit by barbed wire, hatchets, and how they died. And despite being attacked unarmed, they were able to kill more Chinese soldiers. It's a very sad episode. We should not make light of it. Point one. Point two is wokeism is a malaise world over. In the name of flippant irreverence, you end up disrespecting every kind of institution, every kind of people without realizing. If tomorrow I were to mock your or my own, martyred father or somebody who had died a natural death, how would you feel? So this wokeism is the problem. This veneer of intelligence is is so thin that an actor goes to see a march and somebody asks why are there? You say, oh, everybody's together. कुछ तो अच्छा बोल रहे होंगे, कुछ तो अच्छा कर रहे होंगे. This is the level of intelligence. When you say I stand with टुकड़े टुकड़े भारत तेरे टुकड़े होंगे इंशाल्लाह इंशाल्लाह without betting an eyelid, you realize the wokeism is sickness. Where it comes from? It comes from pernicious new left theory, which in the name of cultural study was a launching pad for JNU, all kind of new left, very highly anarchic people who don't believe in family, who don't believe in society, who don't believe in state, nor believe in nation. So for them, it has to be perfect individual freedom. So either you are living in a utopia or you are living in a jungle. So are we living in a jungle? We don't want discipline, we don't want society. How do we survive as a civilization? They have no respect for civilization. So what she said came very naturally to her. It was neither a flippant movement, nor it was a, light-hearted movement. It was as if disrespecting people, showing irrelevance to people, irreverence to the people is part of their body politics, the part of
No,
their
Ravi Rai, the problem is.
Just a moment, Zaka, one
Yeah.
point. A young girl says, मेरे पिता को पाकिस्तान ने नहीं मारा, मेरे पिता को एक बंदूक ने मारा, एक गन ने मारा. You understand the malaise. You understand the unthought for stupidity that pierces you in the name of wokeism, which is basically outcome of the new left philosophy.
Okay, Ravi Rai, the issue is even in, let's say, liberal democracies, if people like Richa Chadda want to hold US or UK or other countries, Western democracies as beacons of this thing. The point is, even in the US, yes, you are free to criticize, people have been criticizing America's decision to invade Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, but never will you ever hear, whether you're on the right or on the left or in Hollywood or anywhere, you will never hear people criticizing soldiers who have come back in coffins or in body bags. You will never ever hear that. Even the disastrous thing that happened leaving Afghanistan last year, the soldiers who came back in body bags were never ever criticized. That is the whole point. That Richa Chadda, by doing that, by saying Galwan says hi in the mocking tone that she tweeted, she has insulted people who have died for this country. And I keep going back to it. That is a red line you don't cross. You're free to criticize the army in this country. I don't think, like I said, any institution in this country is above criticism. Supreme Court is not above criticism. Central government is not above criticism. Prime Minister, President, none of them are above criticism. That's why we are a democracy. But to insult people who have given the supreme sacrifice, those soldiers needn't have died. They needn't have become soldiers. They did so because some among us have that selflessness about them. And that's why they became soldiers. That's why they, without batting an eyelid, were willing to die for the country. And Richa Chadda has insulted that.
You see,